The Valley of the Silent Winds. In a secluded valley, hidden far beyond the reach of roads and towns, the wind moved with the gentleness of a lullaby. This valley stretched wide, with rolling hills draped in wildflowers that swayed with the rhythm of the breeze. Tall pines stood along the ridges, their branches humming softly as the wind passed through. A river, thin and silver, traced its way lazily across the land, reflecting the sky in quiet ripples. The valley had always known the wind, not as a storm or a force of disruption, but as a companion that shaped the land with the patience of time. The wind smoothed the stones along the riverbanks, whispered through the tall grasses, and carried seeds from the pines to the open fields. Amid the landscape, there stood an ancient tree, alone, atop the highest hill. Its trunk was thick and twisted with age, and its roots curled deep into the earth like fingers holding the land steady. The tree had stood there for as long as the valley could remember, watching the slow passage of seasons, its branches outstretched toward the sky. Over the years, many of the tree's leaves had fallen, carried far by the wind, and its bark bore the soft scars of countless winters. Yet the tree did not mourn what it had lost. It let the wind take what it needed, knowing that each fallen leaf and every piece of shed bark became part of the valley, feeding the soil, softening the earth, and giving life to new grass and wildflowers. The wind carried the tree's seeds. Each spring, the branches released them into the breeze, and the seeds drifted gently, floating far and wide until they found new places to rest. Some landed by the river, others beneath the shelter of pines, and a few settled on distant hills where new roots quietly took hold. Though the tree stood alone atop the hill, it was never lonely. The valley below flourished with its children, young saplings that grew steadily under the watchful gaze of the old tree. The wind often returned, brushing softly against the bark as if to remind the tree that its presence stretched far beyond the hill where it stood. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned to soft amber, a strong wind swept across the valley. This wind was different, full of restless energy, tugging at the grass and bending the younger trees along the river's edge. The valley felt the shift as branches creaked and leaves scattered in swirling patterns. The ancient tree stood firm, its roots anchored deep in the soil. It did not resist the wind but bent with it, allowing the gusts to pass through its branches. As the wind howled, a large branch cracked and fell, landing softly at the base of the hill. The valley grew quiet once more, and the tree stood tall, though lighter than before. The fallen branch lay in the grass, bathed in the fading light, its leaves still trembling from the wind's touch. In the days that followed, the wind softened again, returning to the gentle hum that the valley knew so well. The fallen branch, now part of the land, slowly began to blend into the earth, enriching the soil and feeding the roots of wildflowers nearby. The tree did not grieve the loss of its branch. It understood that nothing had truly been taken. The branch had simply changed form, becoming something new, something that would continue to shape the valley long after the wind had passed. In time, the seeds that had been carried away sprouted along the far edges of the valley. Young trees, their leaves bright and full of life, stretched toward the sky, their roots beginning the long journey into the earth. The ancient tree watched them from the hill, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. There was no sadness in its heart, only the quiet knowledge that everything it had given, every leaf, every seed and every fallen branch, had become part of something greater. It was not the winds that defined the valley, nor the storms that shaped the land. It was the quiet persistence of the tree's roots, the soft surrender of each leaf, and the trust that nothing was ever truly lost. The valley carried this truth in its soil, in the quiet rustling of the grass, and in the gentle curve of the river's path. The wind, ever faithful, continued to hum across the landscape, lifting the seeds, smoothing the stones, and carrying the story of the old tree far beyond the hills. And as the stars blinked into the sky, the valley rested, knowing that in every fallen leaf, in every seed carried by the wind, the spirit of the ancient tree lived on, woven into the very fabric of the land.